What are you saying, bro? You ready for another lesson?
Man, I can't wait, man. It's been a while, so...
That's a screw.
You can even tell already, you know?
Hey, right rudder, that's it.
Wheel 01, you can backtrack now.
Need to be over the field in between the two.
Alright.
What do you know about increasing the angle of bank?
Full speed.
Exactly.
You're fine, you're on the centre line, and then suddenly you're not, bro.
Next time you're in a grass brush.
That landing. Whew. I'm worn out.
Are you aiming to be a commercial pilot?
Yes, at some point.
Yes, so these calls, they have to be made in a commercial environment. Well done, mate. You're going to make a good commercial pilot.
Thank you.
I'll walk up behind the aircraft.
You're very behind the aircraft. We've got a fuel leak. Have we? Yeah.
By the way, got the whiskey, sorry. The whiskey is quite strong. Mate, you're going to make a good commercial pilot.
You still have control.
No, you tell me when you want to take control. You tell me when you want to take control.
Ever? Do I have to?
Yes. As I say so. Bear in mind, you're going to have to work with what you've got, normally. What do you need?
This one. Oh. I'll make use of what I've got.
Previously on Future Pilot 901.
Okay, how you feeling?
Feeling good?
Good. You're gonna go solo.
Okay. Student Will 08 is ready for departure. We're off.
Student Wheel 08, surface wind is 330 at 9 knots, we've got one to vacate.
Student Will 08.
Charlie Kilo is right base, get out to land. Student Wheel 08, minute takes and well done.
This aircraft is so nice to fly with.
Yeah, very nice.
Victor Golf, clear to enter South Controlled airspace now in the climb task chute 3,000 feet, heading 090 degrees.
Yes, 3,000 feet is very nice and smooth.
Yeah.
It's not like in the cloud.
Golf, resume that location, Sierra November. This the procedure report on both flights established.
The whole point of getting your IMC is you fly clouds. That's sort of where we are roughly. See?
Okay.
So we came in for an approach on runway 23. We did a missed approach, and now we're being vectored around to do another approach into runway 23.
Yes, yes, welcome back. We are back. What's up, boys and girls, ladies and gents, aviators, aviation enthusiasts? Welcome back to Future Pilot 901 live on Kick and YouTube every Monday, 7 p.m. Zulu time. That's UTC. I'm your future captain. My name is D, and this is episode number 33. And today we're going to be talking about dating versus becoming a pilot. It's gonna get real. It's gonna get real, and I'm going to be honest with you guys, like I usually am. You know what happens when the two big, huge parts of your life clash. For example, where you have a dream that you want to achieve, but also relationships are just as valuable, if not more valuable. One could argue. So, how do you marry the two? What happens? What should you even date? These are all questions I'm asking myself. I'm asking myself many, many questions. So I'm going to be thinking about that today, and hopefully you'll join the conversation. Hopefully you join the conversation. We've got a lot to get into. Let's get into this.
Ever since I was a kid, I had a dream of becoming a pilot, but could never afford it. One day I decided to stop making excuses, to sacrifice my comfort, to make my dream happen. My name is D, and this is my journey. This is Future Pilot 901.
Yes, yes, yes. It's 2026, and we're doing it big out here. 1 second. There we go. That's much better. It's been a couple of weeks. I had a week break, or 2 Mondays break after the whole week of streaming that I did from the 5th to the 8th of Jan. And then I did a bonus episode that weekend. If you've not watched that, then I don't know what to say to you. It was really good. I had some guests on, so that was amazing. A lot of insight, a lot of information. If you've not watched any of those episodes, make sure you take yourself back to the Future Pilot 901 YouTube page and have a watch, all right? Because there was, a lot of good stuff. A lot of good stuff. A lot of good stuff. Shout out to my Man United supporters. We tucked in Man City last week, or the week before last, and then Arsenal just yesterday. So I'm feeling on top of the world, on top of the world, on top of the world. Yes, sir. All right. Enough with the shenanigans. Let's get straight down to beeswax. So as you guys know, I'm considering what to do with these this show, particularly this year, because my focus is very much on assessment prep. Speaking of airline assessment prep, I've been doing a live stream for assessment preps, but I'm not making that free. Wait, that is the wrong sound. What is going on? There we go. It's not going to be free. The reason why is I don't want anybody to be copying what I'm doing to try and sabotage me. I know what the internet is like. I know exactly what the internet's like. So it's on Patreon, which means that you have to pay a little bit of a fee to have access to those streams. And importantly, I know exactly who's watching. So shout out to all you, internet lurkers that love to watch my shows in the background, never commenting, never chatting, never liking, never sharing, but still just following me. You can't do that on Patreon, can you? Yes, sir. You cannot do that on Patreon because there's a two-way accountability. I'll know exactly who you are, and I'll be accountable to you, and you're accountable to me, and I think that is fair. Righty. Big topic for today. I'm going to be thinking about it as I talk through it. I don't know exactly what I'm going to say. I blame this episode on the producers. Listen, I'm going to be honest. I hope you can be honest. Any questions in the chat, send them through. We're going to be not only hearing from me and my story, but also what I know from other people, and also watching and reacting to a few videos on this topic. So get yourself a cup of tea, get yourself a drink, sit back, relax, go on a nice little walk as we delve into the topic of dating versus becoming a pilot. So to kick off the conversation, I wanted to share a clip from one of the streams right at the start of the year, just to kick off the conversation. Let's see what one of our guests had to say about this topic. So the question here was, how do you balance a relationship with becoming a pilot? Now, hopefully I don't scare people off in the first couple of minutes, but I think it's a good place to start. Let me get rid of this because I don't like that color. There we go.
The second one about how do you have work-life balance? The truth is, it doesn't exist. I unfortunately, like work-life balance.
Okay.
How do you have work-life balance? The truth is, it doesn't exist. I unfortunately, like work-life balance only exists if you're rich, right? And you have to be honest. If you don't have like 200 grand in the bank, disposable, work-life balance doesn't exist for you, right? You can choose to have life, or and not achieve your goals, or you can choose to like achieve your goals, or you can choose to take like 20 years to achieve your goals, right? And it gets harder because inflation means that flying keeps getting more and more expensive, and your dream keeps going further and further away from you. So at some point, I'm more in favor of just being honest, right? If your flight training is going to cost you 60 grand, you know, that's 6 grand a year for 10 years, or that's 60 grand in 1 year, and everything in between. And you can just pick how much work life you want to balance, and then you can decide how long your training is going to take. And I think that's just a reality that you have to be honest with yourself about. You know, you can't do everything, and you definitely cannot have it all at the same time unless you're rich already. So that should hopefully answer your question for yourself, to just realize it's up to you to decide how much work-life balance you have. But I do things that I enjoy. I don't do a job I hate. I do a job I enjoy with engineering. I also do flying, which I love, and I also do my family, which I love. And so it's really like just work-life integration more than work-life balance. So sometimes
work-life integration. I like that. I like that.
Work has to suffer. I also do flying, which I love, and I also do my family, which I love. And so it's really like just work-life integration more than work-life balance. So sometimes work has to suffer for life. You know, I've got a kid. If he's ill, you're not going to be focused on work that week, you know. But likewise, if I've got an exam, you know, I'm probably not going to be the best. If I've got my check ride coming up, I'm not going to be the best dad that week, right? And then you just make up for it at some later time. That's just the reality of our industry. And then the final one was how do I feel?
Right. Interesting launch point for our conversation. Interesting launch point for our conversation. Real honest words there from Keno, who's a flight instructor and engineer as well. So, questions in the chat. Feel free to drop questions in the chat or in the comment sections. There we go. There we go. Bosh. Right. So I've kind of had a bit a bit of experience in this topic, you know, ever since I decided to start taking flying seriously. I've, you know, dated a fair few. Undisclosed number, it doesn't matter. But let's talk first of all about the different phases. Okay, so in a relationship you have different phases. You've got first of all getting to know somebody, potentially some people call that dating, and then, you know, some people distinguish that from LTR, which is long-term relationship, which is more of a I don't know if it's a commitment. It's more like we've been together for a while and we kind of know that we're for each other, kind of thing, but haven't yet fully committed. I don't know. I don't understand that world. And then there's obviously marriage, where you definitely make a commitment. You make it in front of other people, and you know, do things that symbolically say, I am committed to you, full stop. All right. So that's the relationship side. And then there is the aviation side and the phases of it. And again, I'm going to be honest with you guys about where I am, because I think life, you need to be authentic. And I love being authentic, even though sometimes it's difficult and it's so easy to want to put up an appearance, and it's tempting because we want people to think that we're better than what we are. We want to think that we're better than what we are. It's the truth. But there is something about being inauthentic that means that you're caged, that you're not unleashed, that you're not really experiencing life as you could be. So I try to be authentic. I try to tell my story as honestly and as truthful as I can without oversharing, which then becomes a little bit unhealthy. But when it comes to aviation, you have this phase of being an aspiring pilot, where it's just conversation. You haven't started yet. It's like, it's a dream. I've always wanted to do it since I was a kid, you know, and that comes with different sets of benefits and challenges. And then you have your, you know, you become a training pilot, whether this is PPL, which I currently hold a PPL license, or a PPL, which is a private pilot's license. And then there is the hour building phase. And then there's the phase where you're doing your ratings and stuff like that. And each kind of training it gets progressively expensive in some ways. And then you become an airline pilot, but very low in seniority. And then you rise in seniority. Now, how your life looks and the balance that you can have at each one of those phases can look very different. Okay. And so, you know, okay, off the bat, I'll say this. The thing about training to become a pilot, in my experience so far, but also what Keno's saying, and he's been, you know, a flight instructor for years and flight examiner for years. And he's been flying for 25 years, I think, if I remember correctly, is if you're already, say, married, it's very difficult to start flight training without the permission of your spouse. The reason why is that flight training and becoming a pilot isn't a personal sacrifice. It's a familial sacrifice. Your schedule, even when you're training, particularly, and I can talk a little bit more about the aspiring pilot / hour building phases, right? Because I'm living and have lived those. But it looks crazy. The financial commitment and financial investment is incredible. So, for example, when I first started taking flight training seriously, I didn't stop myself from dating. But it was a little bit, you know, it was a little bit touch and go. I won't lie. It was it was a little bit touch and go. Because like at the same time, I had a YouTube channel, and on my YouTube channel, I was showing that, you know, I'm sleeping in my car, living out my car, 7 months, sleeping on my aunt's couch, 2 years, to fund flight training. And but at the same time, like when I start seeing somebody, I know it's going to come up, right? I'm not going to keep it a secret from them. So even though I don't tell them, they'll watch a video of me flying and do my flying lessons and seeing my intro and all of that, and they'll be like, "Oh, so you know, this is okay. This is what you're doing." So there's an element of that is that is difficult. That's embarrassing. I'll just say it. Embarrassing. There you go. There you go. I will just say exactly what the feeling is. It's embarrassing. So when people like, yeah, wow, like you're really going for your dream, it's like, yeah, that's the glamorous side of it. But there's another side. Aha. The other side is embarrassing. Okay, embarrassing. And even worse than embarrassing is seeing pity in the looks, you know, on people's face, or hearing pity in their tone. That's really difficult. Now, then, interestingly, what you experienced, or what I experienced in that phase, was a loyalty, not a loyalty. How can I put it? There's sometimes people want to help, and they're more likely, you know, when you're kind of in a tough time, people want to be useful. And so I would say, you know, I was blessed to meet people who were wanting to support, but obviously, like I wouldn't let them, because like there is such a thing as a line, and beyond that, you're taking advantage of somebody because you're letting them do too much. So I had to put a limit on that. But it was surprising, right, to me, that there were people who wanted to really support me. But I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Now, during that time, up until now, for example, I have, from when I started training, probably over doubled my income, right? So what has that involved? That's involved like working longer hours than what I'm contracted to do. I have not only done that, but also for 2 years, I did 90 credits worth of distance learning degree, business management and French. So whilst I was working full-time, getting promoted, working extra hours at work, I'm also studying a business management and French degree, doing 90 credits. Just to give you an idea, like 120 credits would have been full-time, 60 credits would have been part-time. I was doing 90 credits. On top of that, I was studying for my, you know, PPL exams, doing flight training on the side, teaching salsa on the side. So you can imagine what my schedule used to look like. So there is not only, when I say that becoming a pilot is a familial sacrifice, or it requires sacrifice from you and the closest people to you. I mean that from an energy perspective, right? Because I was working extra hours and doing all those things because I wanted to improve my income so that I could pay for flight training, which means my time is allocated a certain way, right? Otherwise, if I don't, like Kenna was saying, look, let's say it costs you 60 grand, you can choose your intensity. Do you want to take 50 years to pay up that 60 grand for flight training? Or do you want to do it in 10 years? Or do you want to do it in 1 year? You choose your intensity, right? So you have to decide your intensity. It has a time expense, it has an energy expense, it has a financial expense. So for example, the idea of going away on holidays for me were never a thing, right? Then the reason why is because I couldn't justify going away spending hundreds of grand and not paying for flight training with that same money. I couldn't do it, right? Apart from a couple of family trips, kind of got roped into that. They were necessary. One in 2014, one in 2019. I did a couple of little getaways here and there, but generally no holidays, right? And that goes into what Ken was saying. What life balance? What life balance? What life balance? What are you talking about? But what I would say is this. What I noticed is there is this happening, yeah, flexion. And I noticed this from pretty early on in my journey. There's moments of intensity when things get really compact and really like you have to get narrow focused. And then there's moments of relaxation where you can like breathe a bit more air, spend a little bit more, be a bit more kind of relaxed. And then there's times when you have to really zone in, chop down your spending, chop down your time wasting, chop down your energy wasting, really focus, right? And that's what he was saying about, you know, sometimes the aviation has to give way to family. Sometimes family has to give way to aviation. Because when I got my PPO license, then I could relax and I got a scholarship. So that helped. So I could like relax a little bit, slow it down a little bit. But then at some point it goes, all right, now I need to, you know, build the hours. And then you go intense again. And then at some point you relax, let your bank account, you know, recover, then intense and relax, intense and relax. So that brings up a bit of a challenge, yeah, particularly for relationships, because it makes the journey very seasonal. Again, unless you got like 200 grand ready to go, or you saved up all the money at one go and you're ready to go full on and you're going to be intense for 18 months. Fair enough. But generally, particularly if you're going down the modular route, it's going to be like this. And it has been like that for me, which means it can be very seasonal, right? You got summer, you got autumn, you got winter, you got spring, you got summer, so let's say the winters are when you can contribute less into a relationship, into all of that. What are those winter periods? For me, those winter periods have been, for example, 2 months before assessment period. Okay. So for example, now I'm pretty full on into assessment prep mode. Okay. I'll show you guys what my timetable looked like this weekend. I've got somebody to ban. Bye. Here is what my timetable, my schedule looked like this weekend. All right. And then I'm going to draw from, well, we'll see where the conversation goes. Where is it? Let me just make sure I'm not going to show you guys stuff that you ain't supposed to see. Gotta keep this a family show. I'm playing. Okay. Where is it? This is literally no cap. Okay. This is no cap. This is real talk. Yeah. Where is it? Let me show you guys. And the thing is, for each person, it's going to look different. For each person, it looks different. But here is what my schedule looked like on Saturday. Right? And this is supposed to be the weekend. Exercise. That I go a little bit slower on the weekend because I don't have to rush off somewhere. Reading, lunch break. And by the way, like I did more work than what it shows on here. Like this is like a nicer version. but that's how it looked like. And then all of that. All right. So that's my weekend. That was my weekend. Now imagine if I'm dating and people want to spend time. Let's say I give a day in a week. All of those things scheduled for the day are deleted. What does it then do? That then puts pressure on all the other times. So what ends up happening, and this is very common to what I have seen online, that when I'm there, I'm fully there, but when I'm not there, I have to make sure that I'm fully doing what I need to do, right? So that when I'm there, I'm not distracted by what I should have done, right? And this is very much the on the way phase, all right? The on the way phase. So that makes it very difficult. It makes it very challenging, because what if you want to be spontaneous? Okay, so that's one of the challenges that comes up, because if it's airline prep season, if it's, you know, I'm doing a particular training, I'm going to have exams, there is no room for spontaneity and all of that. Like, you can do the little things, but they really have to be little things. Because what can't happen is, oh yeah, spontaneously go out, and then you missed out on your studying, and then you fail your exam. So time becomes much tighter. So going back to what I was saying earlier, if you're starting the journey and you're already married, it's kind of difficult to do it without the permission of your spouse, in a way. Like, they have to be on board. They have to be a partner. Like, they have to have agreed to sacrifice along with you, right? Otherwise, it makes it very difficult for you to even get started. If you're not committed at that point and you're single and maybe you're going to be dating, that presents a totally different challenge, because now it's like you're not committed to that person. And then, you know, usually if the battle and the choice comes between relationship and flight training, well, you make your choice. And what can happen is, say, for example, you know, when you're in your relaxed season, it builds a certain perception of you that, you know, you're relaxed and you can just meet up anytime, and you can just, you know, kind of go out and have dinners and do this and do that, and, you know, because you're in a relaxed moment. And then what can happen is, when you then come into like focus season, that can be a huge shift to deal with, right? That and hey, look, I'm saying this because I empathize, or I think it's difficult being the other person, dating an aspiring pilot, a training pilot. I think it can be very challenging, right? Because what happens then is, you know, suddenly they're not available anymore like they used to be. Then the question is, why have you changed? The question is, like, what's happening? Do you not want the relationship anymore? But really, it's, I need to study because I have to pass these exams. And this is like my super focus mode. I need to go to bed at 10 p.m. I can't be like staying up late. I can't do it, right? But that can be very, very difficult for the other person to understand and to not get carried away. Now, last episode, we talked about trauma and the impact of trauma. And I started to bring in the conversation about the central nervous system, not just the central nervous system, the peripheral nervous system, but not just the peripheral nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, which is part of the peripheral nervous system. And the autonomic nervous system is the part of your nervous system that controls all the involuntary stuff. On one hand, you've got your, let me see if I can remember this, autonomic nervous system. You've got your sympathetic. which is all about like, how can I put it? It activates you. So it's like fight or flight response, right? And then you've got your parasympathetic, which is your rest and relaxation or rest and recovery. So that's your digestion, that kind of thing, controls. And what happens is, I would venture to say that when you're in a relationship, you're not really in a relationship with just the person. You're actually in a relationship with their nervous system. Right? And like we talked about in the last session, in the last episode, generally, most people have been through some experiences in their life that have scarred them, that have marked them. For example, if I'm dating somebody and I'm in my relaxed season, right? And I can meet up past 10 p.m. and I can spend a little bit more extra and all of that. And then I get into my focus zone. That can seem very much, kind of fit the pattern of maybe somebody that hurt them in the past. And then that can mean that now, as opposed to them being supportive, they are wondering and questioning because their alarm bells, their nervous system, their fight flight response has been activated, right? So, and what happens when our systems are activated? We don't think logically. We don't. We think like our body just acts to preserve us. Our brain just works to preserve us, right? So in that moment, logic means nothing. It's just like need, right? Danger. That's what's happening, right? So the whole idea of like, oh yeah, logically, yeah, you want to achieve your dream. Yeah, this makes sense. Like you've got assessment prep coming up. Yep, you need to work on that. Yep. Go. Do it. Like that is very difficult, right? Because brain's going danger. They're moving away. Danger. They got less time for you. They don't like you anymore. They don't want you anymore. They're not for you anymore. Oh, danger. They want to cheat. Danger. Right? So it's a challenge. It's a challenge. And I mean, I don't know much about other industries and other roles, but becoming a pilot presents specific kind of challenges to relationships. I don't know how unique that is, but I know they're unique to many other roles. So if I was training, going to uni and doing sports therapy like Mo was doing, I may not have that problem, right? So yeah, it's very tricky. Now, questions in the chat, thoughts in the chat, and I will have a look at them. Let's see. So I've got a list of questions. Wait, and that's not what I'm looking at. I've got a list of questions that I want to. Oh, where are they gone? Did somebody steal my list of questions? I had a list of questions here. Let's see. Where are my list of questions? Original. Nope. Let me refresh. I want to watch this video because I watched a video earlier that just kind of I thought was really useful. But the point I wanted to drive, in this segment is that it requires a sacrifice not only from you, but also the people closest to you. And if they are not willing to sacrifice, you're going to have conflict. Speaking of conflict, hey, I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna be fully honest, guys. This can go no further. All right, this can go no further. All right, this is just between you and I. All right, how does that conflict turn up? And the reason why I'm saying that you're in a relationship with somebody's nervous system, and don't just think of it as just them. And when I say in a relationship with somebody else, like, that's a reminder to myself that I also have a nervous system. And the truth is, we operate differently. You know, when somebody is like grounded, how they respond to a problem is vastly different to when their nervous system, fight, flight, freeze, is activated. You become different. The way you see the world changes, your attitude changes, your way of approaching, your tone changes. All right. So what I've learned is when I meet somebody, I mean, in any sphere of life, right? Not just romantically. When I meet somebody and they present themselves to me in one way, I'm like, all right, so this is you in this state. This is how you are maybe when your alarm system is not activated. What about you when your alarm system is activated? Like, how do you act then? And I always look out for how I act when my alarm systems are activated. I'll come to that in just a second. But what happens is you can easily have mixed messages, right? Because the grounded them says, hey, I support your dream. Like, yes, like, this is so ambitious. Like, it's amazing. Like, you've so single-minded on what you want to do, and you won't let anything get in the way. I love that. I love that about you. In fact, that's one of the things that attracts me to you. Right? And then on the other hand, when it's like, okay, cool, so I'm not going to be able to meet up like this weekend because I need to study, then it's like, why don't you spend time with me? Because alarm systems, and we're human. Like, again, I'm not even saying that, I'm not pathologizing them, is what I'm saying. Because, let's say I'm not pathologizing us, because this is human nature, right? Alarm systems are activated, and you forget how much you wanted to support somebody, and it's just all about danger, 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 need, right? So, for example, last year, this is going no further, right? Let's just double check. It's just between you and me. Yeah. All right. So last year I had assessment day. This is the furthest I'd ever got during my assessments. And I ended up in an argument the night before. Why? I don't need to go into the details, but basically, alarm systems were going off in the other person. Meanwhile, I'm like, I just need to get done with what I need to do. Like, and it's amazing because it doesn't matter how much you explain things ahead of time, until you're actually in the situation, you almost don't know how you're going to react and how they're going to react. Like, we can talk about it. And I'm a very honest person. We talk about it. And it's, okay, so from January to, June, I'm going to be super focused on this. This is what I'm going to be doing. So, talk about it. It doesn't matter how much you talk. There's a difference between talking about it when your fight, flight, freeze systems are grounded, to actually living it and your fight, flight, freeze systems are going. And so I find that sometimes people say they're going to be supportive and they're not, and not because they're bad people or anything like that, but simply because we did not anticipate that our alarm systems would be activated in that moment. And so when they're activated, we don't know what to do with that. And what usually happens when our alarm systems are activated, we make the other person the problem, right? We fixate on what they did. So if I'm feeling insecure, it's, I don't know, I do salsa. So maybe my partner danced with somebody. I'm now feeling insecure. I then take it that they did something wrong. They danced in a bad way, right? When that's not necessarily true. It's not, it might be, but it's not necessarily true, right? And how we can know that our alarm systems is activated is we have a disproportionate response, right? Our response is much bigger than what the situation warrants. And that's about being honest with self. It's about being honest with self, because no one can tell you, well, you should have people in your life who you trust enough for them to tell you you're overreacting. But obviously, you need to trust them, because if you don't trust them, you'll think they're just saying that to manipulate you. But that's how you know that it's a trigger for you. And it's so important to know your triggers. So one thing I learned to do was, when I'm triggered, I generally don't look for the other person to calm me down. I learned to face it and to breathe it in, because again, if you've watched the last episode, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And hey, we're going to have a real conversation. We have real conversation, the realest conversation on here, the realest conversations. When your nervous system has been through experiences, and that's why, like, when I'm talking about this stuff, it's, if you feel like you've had an easier time through life, this probably doesn't resonate with you. All right. But when your nervous system has grown up witnessing domestic abuse, right, those alarm systems work differently. When your nervous system has grown up, I don't know, being taken advantage of, being mistreated, being abused, being lied to, being disregarded, your nervous system works slightly differently, right? If you have, there's this thing called ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. This could be a bunch of things, like parents having drug or substance misuse problems during childhood. It could be parent or family member imprisonment. It could be divorce in the family. It could be death in the family. All of these things have an impact on your alarm systems and your blueprint of the world, and therefore how you act in the world. And so if they are unresolved, one, or two, you don't develop successful strategies for them, they come back to haunt you. Even when you've dealt with it, or you think you've dealt with it, it can still come back to haunt you. It can still come back. When I say haunt you, I mean come back into play, right? So for example, I can't undo the fact that my mom passed away when I was 12. Like, there's nothing that I could do to control that. There's nothing that I can do to reverse that. There's nothing that I could do to take away the fact that that impacted my nervous system. So that means that I'm more likely to be, or I am more sensitive to, and this is interesting, I'm more sensitive to somebody disappearing, right? Because as a young person, age 12, you don't like, usually you think everyone's going to live forever at that age, right? I still hadn't got the concept of people passing away and not being able to see them again and that kind of thing, right? So for me as a child at that age, it registers as, hey, here's a support system that I'm relying on, and then boom, that support system is gone, right? So if I sense that somebody I'm leaning on moves away, like that's a trigger for me. But you can't reverse that. So what I've had to learn to do is, when I feel that, it doesn't mean that it's happening, right? It's just my nervous system trying to keep me safe, my brain trying to keep me safe. And what I learned was to, one, breathe it in. Just breathe it in, calm it down, and to face it, not to run away from it. That's the other thing. It's so easy to run away from these negative emotions, right? When the negative emotions that we run away from or that we reject will usually hide things that we need to resolve, in my experience. So I've learned, it took me years. It took me years to get to this point, but I've learned now to feel it and go, okay, cool. Right now I'm feeling a sense of abandonment. Cool. All right, breathe it. Just relax. I'm not going to rush and tell the other person to do anything. I'm just going to like focus on me for a second, right? I'm going to breathe, slow it down. I'm going to be grateful that I have this feeling, right? Because it's a blessing. I truly think it's a blessing to feel. And that's a deep feeling within me, right? Even the negative stuff. So when it happens, I can go, all right, it's that negative feeling. I'm grateful that I can feel it, you know, and I can take it in. And I'm like, okay, cool. What is this telling me about me? Forget the other person. What is it telling me about me and where I am right now? Okay. Then I need to do the things that regulate and ground me. And that needs to be not something that requires or demands something from somebody else, right? It needs to be something that I can do to calm myself down. If somebody else does something that helps, hey, that's a bonus, right? But I have to carry that feeling. I have to carry regulating myself. What do I need to do? Do I need to exercise? Do I need to do some breathing? Do I need to read a little bit? Do I need to watch something? Do I need to talk out loud to myself like a crazy person? Whatever I need to do. I obviously you learn strategies for yourself, right? But it helps. Then you ground yourself. Then you can have a grounded conversation about what happened in a way that doesn't put or dump stuff on the other person, right? Now, why is all of this important? Because what I'm saying is, and I want to share a video in a second, is when you're in a relationship with the other person's nervous system as well, and they're in a relationship with your autonomic nervous system. And nervous systems, depending on what you've been through, will be triggered. And when they get triggered, how you respond to those triggers will determine the outcome. And becoming a pilot presents specific kind of challenges that will trigger in specific kind of ways, right? And if you don't foresee it, you can't prepare for it. And if you don't prepare for it, you're less likely to make it through it. That's what I think. That's what I think. I can't do better than that. Can't do better than that. Shout out to the All Person Official. I'm all good, man. I'm all good. I'm all good. I hope you are well. I hope you are well. So I want to share this video. I found a couple of cool videos that I want to bounce off of, right? Let's see how we doing. I found a couple of videos that I want to bounce off of. Maybe let's start with this. And these are married women. I feel like I opened a can of worms, to be honest. These are married women talking about what it's like to be married to a pilot. Okay. But there's a shorter video. I'll start with a shorter video. I'll change. Do you know what? I just changed the order. I've just I've just reworked the order. I've reworked the order. There we go. There we go. Yep. I literally just have. And so with that said, I'm going to start with this one. Yeah. And I'm going to be reacting to it. Let's see. What's this one called? Can pilots be married and have family lives? Let's find out what they're saying.
Successful relationship and be a pilot. Can you have a successful relationship and be a pilot at the same time? Well, if you've heard of all these stories of pilots of having all these crazy affairs when they're on layovers, having secret wives at different destinations, and having a high divorce rate, that's all true. That's actually very common in this industry. And in this video, I'm going to give you some of the tips that
What did he say now? That's so true. What? I didn't quite hear that. Let's go back.
divorce rate, that's all true. That's actually very common in this industry. These crazy affairs when they're on layovers, having secret wives at different destinations, and having a high divorce rate, that's all true. That's actually very common in this industry.
Right. I'll say this. If you think that you're a pilot and you're going to like date somebody and you think that's not going to be on their mind, you're just not being realistic. You're not being realistic because of course that's going to be on their mind. All right. But let's keep going. Come back to that.
And in this video, I'm going to give you some of the tips that has helped me and has helped other people that I respect in aviation, that's helped them to have a long-term relationship. And I would say the biggest tip I have for you is to choose the right partner. You want to find a partner that is okay to be independent on their own. Because as a pilot, you're going to be away for a couple of days at a time. And in those couple of days, you want your wife or your husband to be able to be keeping everything under control at home. If your partner is not capable of doing things independently on their own, right off the start, you have a problem. Obviously, within limit, you're not going to be gone for a month and expect everything to be okay. But if you're just going for a couple of days, have things already planned out where you can support your spouse in that transition period. The other thing that's going to help you is the trust factor. Yes, you're going to be away, in destinations for a long time with, strange crew members that you not know before. And it's important to not do foolish things when you're away. You must have that trust factor that the other person, when they're going to go on the layover or they're going to go on, a long trip, that they're going to be to themselves. They're not really going to be intermingling and doing things that they shouldn't be doing. So that trust factor is huge. And that goes both ways, including the spouse that's going to be at home. A lot of times that I've talked to pilots who have been divorced, it's because they've actually broken that trust factor with their spouse. So that's an obvious one, right? Don't fool around. If you want to do all those things, do so before you get into a long-term relationship. But once you're in a long-term relationship, I highly advise not doing something like that, especially when you're at work. My next...
Okay. Let me just respond to that a little bit. Well, one, they need to be able to be independent. Otherwise, it doesn't work, right? And two, they need to be able to be faithful, essentially, is what he's saying. Don't fool around, to the pilot, but also to the, you know, the person staying home. Now, I think, and hey, everyone can have their opinion on this. This is a very subjective topic to a large degree. For me, I take boundaries very seriously, right? Particularly when I'm committed in a like relationship that I know I'm committed to. Boundaries are very, very important. And the other thing that goes with boundaries, so for example, again, I'm going to be straight with you guys. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I wouldn't be hanging out alone with anybody, like any woman, when I'm in a committed relationship. I'm not hanging out alone in private with any woman. Like, that's just my standard. So that's just not happening, right? The other thing is I value transparency, which means I don't have hidden corners. Like, when I'm committed with somebody, whatever they want access to, they can have access to, because I'm fully committed to that person, right? So there isn't these pockets of room of like places or people who I have this, you know, private relationship with that they can't access. I just don't believe in that. And obviously, hey, each to their own. If you disagree, that's fine. Like, let me know why you disagree, because I might have something to learn from that. But I think, you know, I think about it this way. Boundaries are like, they're like putting on a seatbelt when you're driving. Now, I don't put my seatbelt on because I think, ooh, today looks a particularly dangerous day. There's a chance I could crash down the road, so I'm going to put my seatbelt on, right? I just put my seatbelt on. That's good practice. Just generally speaking, good days, bad days, neutral days, doesn't matter, right? Just good boundaries. So what I hear sometimes is people going, oh, like, why do you need to have that standard? Because it's like, there isn't any risk of you getting with this person. Yeah, okay. But that would be like me saying, well, there's no risk of me crashing today, so I'm just not going to put my seatbelt on. It's like, it's not good practice. So I prefer to just have good boundaries regardless, just generally. So like, hey, I'm saying it out loud. I've had this standard for some time now. It's served me well so far. You won't catch me. Like, if I'm in a committed relationship, you will not catch me hanging out with a woman anywhere alone by ourselves in private. Never. And you will never, there's no woman who can go to my woman and say, oh, by the way, I had this private conversation with your man that you don't know about. Like, that just doesn't happen. And that, I found, has kept me out of trouble. Now, take it with a pinch of salt, because what do I know?
For you is to keep the relationship going. You know, when you got into a relationship with this person is because you really like this person, you want to spend a long time with this person. So when you're away, you can actually continue that relationship going by sending text messages. Luckily, in this modern day and age, if you're away, you can send texts, you can send WhatsApp messages. If you don't have, let's say, an international plan, you can do FaceTime. Just keeping that conversation going, keeping in touch, you know, when you're away really makes a difference. I've noticed it myself. Let's say if I'm gone for 2 days and I'm really exhausted because maybe I had 4 flights a day and I never had a time to check in with my family. When I got back after my 2 days, let's say on the 3rd day when I got back, I noticed my kids grew up just a little bit more and they look a little different. My family looks a little different. And I know it's weird to say it's only 2 days, but it does actually make a difference. Versus on the other days where on my layovers, when I checked in, I did maybe FaceTime, I saw my family. The change didn't really seem that much. I kept in touch with, all the changes that are happening, any emergencies at home that have happened. I'm on top of those things. So keep the relationship going even when you're at work. You can easily pull up your phone and say, hey, how's it going? Hope everything is okay. I love you. How are the kids? Something simple like that. Just a simple check-in really goes a long way. And here's my final tip for you. This does not work in all situations. In fact, I'm still struggling with this last one. And that is trying to bring your family with you at work. It might not work if you have small kids, but let's say when you don't have kids yet, you're just the two of y'all. Aviation's a fun career, and maybe one of the reasons your spouse is attracted to you is probably your lifestyle or the potential lifestyle you have as a pilot. So if you look at the flight loads and you notice that there's a whole bunch of open seats and you're going to San Francisco on a layover, you're going to Miami on a layover, you can consider bringing your spouse with you, and then you can stay for free at the hotel that the company provides. And then on the next day, bring your spouse back. And while you're on the layover, you guys can do nice fun activities together, go explore together. You can make this a nice paid vacation, paid for by the company, of course, and you're on vacation, you enjoy with your spouse. Obviously, make sure you don't do anything foolish. You're still on company time. You're still getting paid by the company. So when you're with your significant other on a layover, make sure you still get enough sleep. Make sure you don't, overdrink. You keep your maximum regulations for the duty in terms of drinking. You also show up on time, well prepared. Don't call in sick, obviously. All these little common sense, basic things you do. If you do that, again, you're developing that relationship with the other person. And I believe these are the simple things you can do in order to be in a happy, successful relationship, especially as a pilot. All right, take care. We'll see you in the next video.
I mean, that sounds good to me. Sounds really good. Sounds really good. I want to pick up on a point that he made on layovers, or basically you're going away with your partner and, kind of using this perk to fly somewhere together, and you're together whilst you're away, and then your partner flies back. But he says you can't do silly things like drinking too much, like not getting enough sleep or enough rest. Fatigue kills, all right? Especially when you're talking about being in an aircraft, flying an airplane with multiple systems. And you need to know, and you've been trained to know what all these systems are. And you have to make lots of decisions, and they're life or death decisions, though they can be, sometimes indirectly, sometimes directly. It cannot be overstated just how important that is. Now, that's obviously when you're airline pilot. What about when you're training, right? How important is sleep? When you've got a ton of new information. So, for example, for me, I have a full-time job, which is not in aviation, helping families, let's put it that way. So I'm constantly processing what this family is going through, or that family is going through, what challenges out there, what services out there. I'm also processing learning information about aviation. I'm processing future Pilot 901 projects, and be thinking about the next project that we can do. For example, I had the week of streaming from the January the 5th to January the 8th, and then the bonus stream on the Sunday. That took a lot of planning, took a lot of preparing, took a lot of creating, a lot of promoting, contacting people, all sorts, right? So there's all of that. On top of that, I've got film projects that I'm involved in, my own film projects, other people's film projects. So there's kind of a lot of information that's happening. And so particularly when I then start airline prep, for example, sleep becomes more important, because if you don't sleep enough, your brain can't recover enough for you to retain information as you could, right? So again, I'll be straight up with you guys. I'll be honest with you guys. Again, remember, I said there's flexion, relaxation, there's kind of focused, intense moments, and then there's relaxed times. And what I found is when I'm in very focused times and I'm more meticulous about my sleep, but sometimes that can be difficult to understand, right? Because it's like, well, why couldn't you just stay up? Because, hey, look, people stay up late because it's easier to do it. Let's be honest. It's easier to just stay up and just kind of not be as mindful on time and sleep. And particularly, it depends on what kind of job you have, because some people, they can, have 5 hours of sleep and still be functional at work. All right. Because maybe they're over, like they've gone past the curve. There's like a curve, right? Where, when you first started a job, you're learning so much about the job, right? That it's like lots of information, lots of people, lots of new faces. At some point, the curve kind of settles a little bit. And now you're kind of like, I know my job. I can kind of do it with my eyes closed. Right. Thing is, when you're an aspiring pilot, learning all of these different things, or a training pilot, or even you become a, airline pilot, that curve doesn't curve like other places. It doesn't relax like other places, right? And so sleep is still super important. So then the question is, why can't you stay up? Why can't you do this? Why can't you do that? And it's like, because I can't, because my brain needs to recover, and so that can be difficult to understand. Again, you're in a relationship, your nervous system is in the relationship, and you're in a relationship with the other person's nervous system. And so that can be that for them, and it's a challenge to work through, So again, if they can be independent, it's a win because they can just understand it. But don't take it from me. Let's hear from this woman who is married to an airline pilot, and she decided to make a video talking about what it's like. And there's a few videos like this, and I've enjoyed actually looking into these because, yeah, it's a good learning curve. I am going to play at 1.5, right? Because I don't want to spend overly long watching the videos when we can actually listen much faster than what than the normal pace. All right, so here we go. Where is it? Let's go 1.5. Really, I should do 2 times, but we'll do 1.5 for now, and then we'll speed it up in the next one.
Today I'm sharing how the lifestyle of being a pilot wife is not what some may think. I want to help you with any misconceptions you might have about being married to a pilot. There is an ugly reality that can be beautiful, but I want you to see the realistic expectations before you make that plunge into being married to a pilot. I just want to share tips before your marriage takes off in the wrong direction. So buckle your seatbelt, raise up your window shade into my life as a pilot's wife, and take it from me. I'll give you a bird's eye view into being married to a pilot after 17.9 years so that your marriage will take off safely, have no turbulence mid-flight.
17.9 years. I like the 0.9. I like the 0.9. Shout out to my aunt in the chat. Shout out to you. Shout out to my aunt in the chat. Always supporting. Appreciate you.
And have smooth landings year after year. Now, Peter Weber is a pilot on ABC's show The Bachelor, and he is choosing, I think next week, either Victoria, Hannah Ann, or Madison as his future wife. I, in my prediction, think no one will get a final rose, or no one is going to be chosen because of some drama. Marriage to a pilot is not exotic travel every week, first class seats, luxury hotels, and romantic restaurants all over the world. You fly standby, meaning if there are empty seats.
If you live in England and you're between...
Oh gosh, adverts.
far away from your husband. But there is an order of seniority of when the pilot was hired as to who gets on first. So all of those
Wait,
80,000,
we
but
missed
there's
a bit.
like travel every week, first class seats, luxury hotels, and romantic restaurants all over the world. You fly standby, meaning if there are empty seats, you may have a seat far away from your husband. But there is an order of seniority of when the pilot was hired as to who gets on first. So all of those 80,000 ramp workers, gate agents, flight attendants, and other pilots who were hired before your husband or wife, they're going to get on first. But if you have a flexible schedule, you will find a seat to somewhere. I spent 11 hours in the Denver airport with a stroller, my carry-on suitcase in the bottom of it, my 2-year-old running baby, his car seat on top of the stroller, and me wearing a backpack. I couldn't drink coffee in that airport. I had to watch him. I couldn't go to the bathroom without all of that stuff for 11 hours because we were considered junior and could not get back to Washington, D.C. Marriage to a pilot is not like a typical married life. You will be alone a lot. So be content with who you are all by yourself. This is a foundational tip for any marriage, really. Before I got married, I had expectations of eating out like we did when we were single with friends. And now when my husband gets home, he's tired of eating out because he just ate out for 4 days straight. And I ate in all by myself for 4 days straight. I need to say that we were also in a new city, so I didn't have girlfriends yet. For eating out, we just had a discussion and we discussed my needs and his needs. He wants to give, I want to give and take. So when he gets home, I have a homemade meal for him, usually. It has been 17.9 years. And then sometimes over his period of days off, we'll go out to eat just together or out to eat 1 or 2 times if we can afford it. Beginning pilot pay is tight, but you get...
Right. Okay. Very important point she's making. Now, take it from her. She's been married to a pilot for 17.9 years. Not 17 years, not 18 years, 17.9 at the point she made this video. Yikes. Like I said, seasons, right? It looks differently. So I think one of the important bits, one of the important things I've learned to look for is adaptability, all right? Because what you can't do is get stuck in one way of doing things. Get stuck to, you know, we always go out on the weekends. If you do that, what if they've got, you know, a few flights for a few weekends? What happens then? Is it going to be complaining about that the whole time? Or is it going to be, do you know what? Okay, we don't have the weekend. What day do we have? We've got the Wednesday this week. Let's make the most of it. Adaptability seems to me to be really important, right? It's a competency that pilots need. We have to be adaptable. There's no question about it. If you're not adaptable as a pilot, you're just not going to make it. But like I said, being a pilot is not personal sacrifice. The people closest to you have to sacrifice too. It's the only way it works, right? And well, if you don't have, you know, if you don't have that kind of partner, then some people end up, you know, finding it very challenging to have a partner, you know, when they're already pilots. For example, for that reason, somebody else talks about it. I don't think we're going to watch that video actually. But sometimes it's easier to date somebody who understands that lifestyle because they've been in that lifestyle. Or sometimes it's better to date outside of that lifestyle because, you know, you want to have something outside of aviation. Hey, it's just each person, pick your poison, basically. Pick your poison. But adaptability, flexibility is necessary. There is no two ways around it. Have to be adaptable. Can't get stuck in one way of doing things. When study time, focus time gets there and you've got an exam, you've got a type rating, things get squashed. Remember what Keno said. Remember what Keno said.
The truth is, it doesn't exist. I unfortunately, like work-life balance only exists if you're rich, right? And you have to be honest. If you don't have like 200 grand in the bank, disposable, work-life balance doesn't exist for you, right? You can choose to have life, or and not achieve your goals, or you can choose to like achieve your goals, or you can choose to take like 20 years to achieve your goals, right? And it gets harder because inflation means that flying keeps getting more and more expensive, and your dream keeps going further and further away from you. So at some point, I'm more of in favor of just being honest, right? if your flight training is going to cost you 60 grand, you know, that's 6 grand a year for 10 years, or that's 60 grand in 1 year, and everything in between. And you can just pick how much work life you want to balance, and then you can decide how long your training is going to take. And I think that's just a reality that you have to be honest with yourself about. You know, you can't do everything, and you definitely cannot have it all at the same time unless you're rich already. So that should hopefully answer your question for yourself, to just realize it's up to you to decide how much work-life balance you have. But
so there you go. Oh no, he mentions the really important part next.
I do what I do things that I enjoy. I don't do a job I hate. I do a job I enjoy with engineering. I also do flying, which I love, and I also do my family, which I love. And so it's really like just work-life integration more than work-life balance. So sometimes work has to suffer for life. You know, I've got a kid. If he's ill, you're not going to be focused on work that week. You know, but likewise, if I've got an exam, you know, I'm probably not going to be the best. If I've got my check ride coming up, I'm not going to be the best dad that week.
Right. If I've got my check ride coming up, I'm probably not going to be the best dad that week. Right. If you're doing an intense period of study. In fact, here is another point. Here's another point. So at the moment, as some of you might know, there is the, you know, airline sponsored cadet scheme, right? Amazing opportunity to have an airline sponsor you, pay 120K to get you trained at no cost to yourself. And you spend 18 months full on focused training because the financial barrier is completely removed. And then at the end of it, you have a job, right? And what happens is people go, wow, that's amazing. Now, because I've got to stage 2 or the middle stage in one of those programs, at some point they have a serious conversation with you and they tell you, look, this is exactly what you should expect. This is the pay you should expect. This is the kind of schedule you should expect. This is how we work. Like, I really want you to know why, because they had a situation where they chose somebody, right? So they had 20,000 applicants. They chose less than 200, let's say 150, for example. And out of that, somebody who had applied and got through all that selection, in the end, couldn't agree with his wife on this sacrifice. Because like I said, it's not a personal sacrifice. The people closest to you have to sacrifice with you. And they couldn't agree. So he had to say, unfortunately, I can't take this spot, because it's not going to work for us. Why? You've got 2 pathways with one of the airlines. One pathway has you in the UK, somewhere in the UK for 6 months, then somewhere in Florida for 6 months, and then somewhere in the UK for 6 months. That's 18 months of full-on training. Now, you're going to have weekends, you're going to have moments, all of that kind of stuff, but the priority is training. So, for example, you cannot overdo it one weekend and not turn up on the Monday. Like, that is not an option. But your partner, your wife, your person is going to have to deal with you being away for 18 months. Yes, this first pathway will have you in touching distance for 6 months, but then you're going to be in America for 6 months, right? Did they sign up for that? Can they handle that? Can you handle that? How are you going to manage that, right? But then you're back after those 6 months if you survive. One of the things that one of the guys I speak to who's on that program said, like, halfway through the training, say like 3 months into his time in America, his girlfriend went to visit and they were able to spend time together, which kind of, it reduced the 6 month period into like 3 months, right? And they had to find other ways of staying connected, like the first video that we watched, one of the guys was saying, finding ways to stay connected. What's the other path? The other path is 18 months in Spain. Now, whilst Spain isn't too far from the UK, it's still a significant period of time. So this guy who had got through all this selection had to say no thank you, right? And so he got removed from, the offer got taken back, right? And then after some discussions, whatever, with his wife, they then decided, maybe we can make this sacrifice. And he came back saying, do you know what? We've changed our minds. Can I please have the spot back? And they were like, it's too late. We can't give it to you now. It's too late. Right? And so these conversations need to be had with people. They need to be had because it does take a bit. It does take a lot. And whilst you're training, what you cannot be doing is having whole big fights and arguments because your alarm systems are going off. You have to manage your triggers. There's no two ways around it. Obviously, let's be human about it. There's going to be moments, but having these boundaries, having these structures is required to protect the relationship during those moments. But it's also the thing of, here's how you can know. Another way you can know, in addition to everything else I've said earlier, how do you know when your alarm systems are going off? When your autonomic nervous system is going off, your fight, flight, freeze, appease system is going off, trying to protect you. How do you know? Usually it's about short term. It's not about the long term, right? Because if you think about it logically, all right, the next 3 weeks are going to be quite challenging. We're not going to get, let's shorten it to 3 weeks. Let's talk about 3 weeks because Keno did 3 weeks of type rating course, intense study, whilst also working. So these 3 weeks, we're not going to get to spend much time together. However, we have a lifetime together. As soon as you put it in a broader context, a year and a half, especially the older you get, becomes not insignificant, but it becomes more trivial than it otherwise was. But what happens is when your alarm system go off, you go, oh no, we're not going to spend time together and we're never going to spend time together ever again. And we're never going to have those positive feelings again. And this is never going to work out. That's when you know for sure this is happening, right? Because you've lost the bigger picture, right? And you've just completely got swept away in the moment. And that basically, there is pretty much very little room for that to happen. And you still be on track mentally for studying, for, being on track with an 18-month course. That's intense, right? So sometimes you have to contextualize it and just say, hey, it's 18 months. All right, how can we get past it? But it's a definite amount of time. It's not forever. But you have to remind yourself that it's not forever. Because as soon as you fall into the trap of thinking it's forever, well, then you're struggling, aren't you? So yeah, I like what everyone, all of them, there's a theme across all the videos we've watched. I think that's understanding the seasons for me. It's about understanding the seasons and being able to ride those waves. With that said, let's move on to this other video because I want to learn as much as possible about this. I feel like I've opened a can of worms and I'm glad that you're here to learn with me. So what's it like to be, no, not that one. Nope, not that one. Yeah, let's have a look.
it's Jen LaForge. Welcome to Joyful Living. Today, I'm going to be giving you the straight scoop on what it's like to be married to an airline pilot, and I'm really glad that you're here. So over the years, I have been asked so many questions by people who are so curious about what the day-to-day life is like when you are married to an airline pilot. And I feel super confident making this video because not only am I married to a commercial airline pilot, but I also was raised by a pilot. My dad worked for Continental Airlines for years. And actually prior to my birth, my mom was a flight attendant for Pan Am. So aviation is kind of in my blood. So although I feel like I'm an expert on kind of the aviation spouse lifestyle, I really don't know what to compare it to because literally this is all I've ever known. So I'm going to do my best to kind of explain it to you guys. But I want to say at the outset, for the most part, our lives are just like anybody else's lives. You know, we've been raising our kids and we have to take care of our house and we have to pay our bills and we get frustrated about, you know, our mortgage and how expensive our car insurance is with 3 young adults. But let's not get into that right now. Today, I just kind of want to cover the basics of kind of how the aviation lifestyle is a little different. It might help you maybe the next time you're on a flight and you look at that pilot or that flight attendant and think about how their life is and how they're just like you and how some things are different than how you live. But also it might help inform your decision if you're thinking of going into aviation. And I know I have a lot of young people that watch that talk to me about, you know, I would love to be a pilot. So if that's you, pay attention because I'm going to give you the straight skinny on the good and the bad of the aviation life. So let's start with the good, because I always like to start with the positive. We have been able to travel all over the world. We have had a fabulous life together. Although my husband is frequently working on weekends, he's oftentimes off for big chunks of time, sometimes a week at a time. We have a lot of fun together, and we've always had a very flexible life, and for that, I am very grateful. The other positive is, for the most part, and I'll get into that a little bit later, he has made a very good living, and although, you know, I worked until just recently, we have been able to afford to own our own home, and, you know, all of those kinds of things. And again, I'll get into the we're not super rich part a little later on, but, you know, it does pay well. The perks of the job are great. And the biggest plus is my husband loves flying airplanes. It is his biggest dream and joy in his life. And he loves going to work. And as his spouse, I can't imagine him doing anything else. So those are all very positive things of the aviation life. There are, however, a few drawbacks. And the biggest one, I think, is our schedule. We do have some flexibility with our schedule, but a couple of things to keep in mind. Scott frequently works weekends and he frequently works holidays. So we're talking Christmas, my birthday, his birthday, the kids' birthdays, Thanksgiving, 4th of July. In fact, he was just off on the 4th of July for the first time when I don't remember when. You can
All right, let's just pause there and get real for a second. Now, again, it's not personal sacrifice. It's the closest people to you have to sacrifice with you. And so, as I was saying, with that particular airline that I was talking about earlier, so now they do that talk kind of like in the middle of selection to make sure they give you all the information so you can take it back to your family, to the people closest to you, and actually talk about what it's going to look like, what it's going to be like. But what we rarely talk about is what it's going to feel like. Because it's one thing to saying, yeah, missing birthdays and all that, but you're going to miss a birthday? Are they going to miss a birthday? And then you go, do you know what, actually, like, that is so important to me and that's a non-negotiable because like that makes me feel cared for. And if you're not here on my birthday, like what's the point? Hey. So it's really important to, when we have these conversations, not only process the information, but process the feeling, right? Process the feeling of the moment. And then not only think of ourselves as our grounded nervous system, but think about it when your like ANS, autonomic nervous system, your fight, flight, freeze gets activated when you're worried, when you're tired, when your window of tolerance is smaller, right? For whatever reason. That's when it gets harder to deal with. So whenever I make a decision, I try to process it. And this is something I'm learning, to process it, not just in my grounded state, but also to imagine myself being in my stressed state, to be in my tired state, and imagine how it would feel in those moments, not just in the good times, because the obvious answer is, well, we can work through that. That's the obvious answer. That's usually the default answer. We can work through that. Yeah, we'll make it work. Yeah, but then when it comes into the moment and how it actually feels, we never really thought about it in that way. We never really felt the emotion of like being alone on my birthday, even though I'm married, even though I'm in a relationship. I feel alone on my birthday, right? Because no one's here to wake me up with a cake with candles on it to say, hey, happy birthday. Or I'm like, I happen to be moving homes whilst he's away, and like, he's not here to like help me with the practical stuff, moving, like that feeling is a real feeling. And I think when we talk about these things, it's very easy to just give it, like look at the surface of it, but it goes deeper, and it affects us deeply. So yeah, it's worth to really, really take that in. But let's go back to the video.
Certainly request those days off, but everything in the aviation world is based on your seniority. My birthday, Scott frequently works weekends. We do have some flexibility with our schedule, but a couple of things to keep in mind. Scott frequently works weekends and he frequently works holidays. So we're talking Christmas, my birthday, his birthday, the kids' birthdays, Thanksgiving, 4th of July. In fact, he was just off on the 4th of July for the first time when I don't remember when. You can certainly request those days off, but everything in the aviation world is based on your seniority. And now finally, after almost 20 years with his airline, he is starting to get enough seniority to get some of those days off, especially in the beginning. Good luck. And so as the spouse and as the person who works in aviation, there needs to be an understanding of this sort of flexibility around days off and what that can look like. It can be a challenge when it comes to making and keeping friends because you can't always buy theater tickets. You can't really plan a trip out of town. You absolutely get vacation, but that has to be requested like a year in advance. And again, whether or not you're awarded certain vacation is all based on your seniority. So it can be kind of frustrating, especially, we try to do things like plan cruises and things like that. And we've been very lucky. And Scott has actually been off most Christmases. We've usually been able to figure out vacations. But, my kids knew from a very young age that Santa Claus also works on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. So he, of course, understands that the kids of pilots and flight crews sometimes have to celebrate Christmas on the 23rd or the 27th. And he actually has a whole special group that go out and do those deliveries so that the kids of flight crews and aviation, as well as first responders and doctors and everybody else that has to work on the holiday, that they're going to get taken care of. So you don't have...
Whoa. Let's hear that again.
And he actually has a whole special group, and flight crews sometimes have to celebrate Christmas on the 23rd or the 27th. It can be kind of frustrating, especially, we try to do things like plan cruises and things like that. And we've been very lucky. And Scott has actually been off most Christmases. We've usually been able to figure out vacations. But, my kids knew from a very young age that Santa Claus also works on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. So he, of course, understands that the kids of pilots and flight crews sometimes have to celebrate Christmas on the 23rd or the 27th. And he actually has a whole special group that go out and do those deliveries so that the kids of flight crews and aviation, as well as first responders and doctors and everybody else that has to work on the holiday, that they're going to get taken care of. So you don't have...
Yeah, that's exactly the kind of creativity you need. They actually told their children, look, obviously Santa's working on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. So even Santa is not at home. Yo, that is wild. They told their kids, like, if Santa's delivering presents on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, whatever, obviously Santa's not home. So your dad is no different than... Yo, that is top class creativity. I rate that. I absolutely rate that. Wow. And so Santa has a special provision for people who work on those days, so you can celebrate it on the 23rd or the 27th. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, that's the kind of creativity. So one, you need to be adaptable, because I'm collecting a list for myself, right? You have to be adaptable. And relaxed season, you can relax together, but focus season, you can focus without that, like, disrupting the relationship, right? Because you can't be robotic. You have to be adaptable. The other thing is you have to be creative, right? Creative about how you stay in touch, creative about how you celebrate, how you make things work. You have to be creative. That is creative. I love it.
have to celebrate Christmas on December 25th for it still to be amazing. But sometimes, especially looking in from the outside, that's a little odd. And we have had friends who just kind of don't understand why Scott can't guarantee he can get off on a particular day. In fact, he won't even know his schedule for the following month until the middle of the previous month. So I just found out his August schedule a couple of days ago. So you really do have to be flexible. Now, the upside to that is, and my mom would tell me this when I was growing up, okay, your dad may not be off on a Saturday and a Sunday, but he's frequently home when you get home from school on Wednesday. And it does enable, flight crew families to sometimes be there when other moms and dads can't be there. So it's not all bad, but you do need to understand you have to have a very flexible schedule and that it will not be a conventional work schedule. The other thing that people kind of have a little bit of a misperception about is the fact that we fly for free. This is a perk that I have enjoyed many, many times, but the thing you need to understand about flying for free is that your flying space available. And I don't know if you have traveled much lately, but flights don't go out with a lot of empty seats. So although we...
Okay, so this segment is very important for my aunt who's in the chat, yeah? So, Manili, you need to listen to this part. This is to do the free tickets, okay? Because she's been on my case. She wants me to make it quickly so that she can get her free tickets, yeah? And deservedly so, deservedly so. She's had my back. Deservedly so, deservedly so. But pay attention because this is about the free tickets, okay? Free flights.
Fly for free. Work schedule. The other thing that people kind of have a little bit of a misperception about is the fact that we fly for free. This is a perk that I have enjoyed many, many times, but the thing you need to understand about flying for free is that your flying space available. And I don't know if you have traveled much lately, but flights don't go out with a lot of empty seats. So although we can fly for free, if we have an important family vacation, if I have a race that I'm traveling to, or some other event that I know I have to be there on a particular date, I am far more likely to purchase my tickets. Jerry Seinfeld says they call it standby because you stand in the airport and wave bye to people who have tickets. So if you've ever flown standby and had one of those days, I was once in the Vegas airport for like 22 hours trying to get a flight out. There is no guarantee that you're going to get to your destination ever. So it
just saying.
Can be very discouraging, and certainly during certain times of the year, we are going to purchase tickets. This would include most of summer vacation, spring break, Thanksgiving, Christmas, especially if all 5 of us are traveling, I'm going to be buying tickets. And that might be post-traumatic stress disorder from growing up as the daughter of an airline pilot, because so many times we were trying to go on vacation and it just didn't happen because we couldn't get on a particular flight. So that can be very frustrating. So it's not quite as jet-setty as it might seem, but having said that, it is a perk that I've enjoyed. We also, through my husband's airline, have the ability to purchase confirmed seats at a discount, and I have utilized that many times. So, it's not all bad, but it's also not quite as fantastic as it may seem on face value. Another thing that I get asked about a lot, and this one actually cracks me up, because we had a babysitter years ago, and I worked full time the whole time Scott was flying until just recently, now that I'm kind of semi-retired. And she said, I always thought airline pilots were really, really wealthy, and you guys just seem normal. And I laughed for like a good hour at that, because anyone who's watching this, whose spouse is an airline pilot, will tell you, we don't make nearly as much money as you think we
So you mean after struggling to pay for flight training, struggling to get selected out of 20,000 people, being in the top 200, you finally get that job. And the big bucks don't start yet. That's really important to know. Again, it affects things. It affects family life, affects, like some people, for example, cannot go for the sponsored cadet schemes, right? Because 18 months without pay, like depending on what phase you're in certain phases where maybe you've got a mortgage, you've got, this setup, you've got a child, you might not be able to do that. That's not realistic. So some people just can't go for that. Or for some people, going into aviation initially will actually be a pay cut initially. Now, the more you build up your seniority, the better it gets, etc., etc. But earlier on, it might be a bit of a pay cut. So again, something to bear in mind, because these things creep up on you and they impact you and they impact your relationships and they impact, how people feel. And most importantly, your autonomic nervous systems. That's where the clash really happens. All right. So very important. Let me see. My aunt said she still wants her free flying regardless. You got it. You got it. You can have all the free flying you like. As long as you can wait in the airport for 22 hours, you're fine. Go for it. Let's keep going.
We do. It is a comfortable life. I am not going to say, there are a lot of people out there that work so hard and are not compensated nearly enough for the work that they do. However, this perception that we get, have this lavish lifestyle and get paid all this money is just simply not true. My husband is an hourly employee. He works very hard for his money, and we are appreciative of that, but we are not putting our feet up on a coffee table made out of cash. And then the last thing I want to address is people always ask me, would I suggest that their son, their daughter, their brother, their husband consider going into aviation? And on this, I feel like a true expert, right? Because I was raised in aviation, my husband is a pilot, and I actually have not advised any of my kids to go into aviation. If they loved it and if they felt like there was nothing else that they could do, I would support it 100%. But the truth is, the aviation lifestyle is hard. It is hard on my husband, as his schedule is always all over the map. Some days he has to get there at 5 a.m. and some days he gets there at 4 p.m. and flies until 1 o'clock in the morning. He never knows his schedule. His days off are very unpredictable. He has to work holidays. It requires a lot of understanding on behalf of family and friends to kind of get the weirdness and quirkiness of the aviation life. Again,
okay, let me just touch on this, right? But not as an airline pilot, because I'm not there yet, but let me talk about it from an aspiring pilot position, trying to make an impossible dream come true. All right. So now I hold a PPL, so it's slightly different. But there was a time when I didn't have a PPL, wasn't our building, was much further behind in my journey, and didn't know if I could even get to where I am today. And so my whole thing was, I'm going to throw everything at this dream, like everything I have, including the kitchen sink. I'm just going to chuck everything at it. And that's why I talked about it earlier. I was working a full-time job, but I decided to work hard enough to get promoted. And I got promoted twice within a year. Within the space of 12 months, I got promoted twice, right? To take on more responsibilities and get extra pay. Why? Because the extra pay goes towards flight training. I also, worked 2 other jobs, right? One, caring for a young person who has special needs, who's quite a handful, but very lovely kid. He's just very physically strong, but amazing kid, lovely kid. And also teaching salsa, and also building Future Pilot 901, which, by the way, came in handy when it was time to try and get myself a scholarship. I think that it helped me because I could show, like, look, I'm not just talking about it. Here I am actually like working towards my dream and pushing and struggling. You can literally see my dedication and commitment for yourself, not just take my story for it. So if I hadn't had a YouTube channel, even though at the time when I got the scholarship, I was like 100, 200 subscribers, something like that, didn't matter. Like, the videos were there. So for me to do all of those projects, like, my time commitment is insane, right? I don't get to like waste too much time. I'm either recovering from work or working. Like, I would wake up early, exercise, go to work extra, leave, start studying until literally I go to bed. Right. And that has an impact on emotional side of it. Right. Because like the window of tolerance becomes smaller, and I then have to plan things so that I can manage my energy. Right. For example, if I know that today I'm going to be working full time, and then I'm going to finish and I'm going to come back home and I'm going to be studying, doing 90 credits, which is like more than part-time study, but less than full-time study, and work 2 other jobs, all that jazz. Like, I manage my energy in a different way. I just go full out. But if I know I'm going to be meeting the person I'm with, I want it to be present, right? So I'm going to manage my energy differently throughout the day. For example, By the way, that schedule, guess what I did during my lunch breaks? I cracked my books open and was reading through my lunch breaks. So I would go from, at the time I was working in a school, special education, specialist provision for children with autism. So that can be quite intense. So I'd work that during my break, crack open a book, read, come back to the classroom, work, lunch break, crack open a book, come back to the classroom, work till the evening, go on a little walk, have a sip of tea, have some dinner, crack open a book, read, right? Then drive home and literally just have enough energy to crash and sleep. That does not leave much room for spontaneity. So one thing that my family and anyone who's been close to me has realized, especially during, again, remember, sometimes I have to zone in more and lock in. Sometimes I can be a bit more relaxed. And when I'm relaxed, that's more understandable. But when I zone in, I am like, when I really, really zone in, it can be like, I can scare myself how much I zone in and lock in, right? But when I get to that moment, because it's crunch time, because imagine now that I'm doing all those things, and soon I'm going to be doing my skills test for flying, and maybe 2 weeks after that or a week after that, I've got my assignments due. And then maybe a month after that, I've got the airline sponsored cadet scheme opening. Imagine when all those deadlines converge, right? It has an emotional impact. It has a mental impact. It has a time impact. It has a money impact. And so it becomes even more important to schedule things so that I know how I'm going to use my energy, so that I know today I can study through all my breaks because I can just get home and crash and sleep. Or I'm going to meet with somebody who's going to need my time. Okay, so I need to pace myself differently through the day. And it's, at some point, it's not necessarily about debating it. It's just, like accepting that's the reality. Obviously, some people don't function like I do, but that's my reality. And this is something that I think they're touching on here that I think is very important. It really, really has an impact on the outcome. Let me go back a tad.
4 p.m. and flies until 1 o'clock in the morning. He never knows his schedule. His days off are very unpredictable. He has to work holidays. It requires a lot of understanding on behalf of family and friends to kind of get the weirdness and quirkiness of the aviation life. Again, you do get paid well, but not nearly as much as people think you get paid. So before you go into aviation, I would seriously research what you get paid, especially in the beginning, because you get paid very little in the beginning of your aviation career. And it's also a very volatile business. My husband was furloughed right after September 11th. It was a very difficult time for us. My father went through the bankruptcy with Continental. So I have not advised our children to go into aviation. Having said that, if your son, daughter, brother, husband is dreaming of an aviation career and that is all they can think about and that is what they long to do with their lives, then they should absolutely go and do it. I just think it's good to go in with your eyes open and an understanding of some of the challenges and some of the pitfalls. If you ever see my husband, if he's ever flying you on a flight, feel free to say hello to him. I think that is one of his secret fears, is that someone is going to say, I love your wife's channel. And if the day that happens, I will be very happy. They are just regular men and women who happen to do something pretty extraordinary. They're all very intelligent. I have loved all the pilots we've known over the years, particularly my father and my husband. And if you have any questions about kind of the day-to-day life of being a pilot, please put those in the comments below. And if you have any questions for Scott, let me know that as well, because I'm hoping I can get him to come on the channel to do a Q&A just about like basic pilot things, especially for those of you that might be.
Right. That's it on that one. Really, really, really good points. I don't think we finished this video though. So I'm going to come back to this video. I don't think we quite finished it. And I think I'd like to pull out some more wisdom from people who are further ahead.
Learn to not base your cost of living on his current pay. You remember what it could be of days off. We'll go out to eat just together or out to eat 1 or 2 times if we can afford it. Beginning pilot pay is tight, but you get through it and you learn to not base your cost of living on his current pay. You remember what it could be like if some national catastrophe took place and you kind of live beneath your means or not above your means. But Peter Weber is a celebrity, so he's getting all that income too.
So that ties in nicely actually to the previous video where they're saying like, essentially initial pilot pay isn't really that much, but it grows over time. But also it's very much depends on the economy, right? And if you have something like a COVID, you have something like a, September 11, the aviation industry contracts and there isn't much going. And so you're better off living below your means just to stack up during that phase, so that if something like that happens, you're still above, you can keep your heads above water, basically. So really important point.
And won't have to worry about buying his wife jewelry on Amazon or at Costco. If a pilot wants to be a captain, or if he wants to fly a larger airplane, that means that you're going to maybe need to move to a new base. And that means you're going to be the new girl on the block several times throughout your marriage. You might need to celebrate your birthday several years all by yourself. Right after we were married, my husband was based in another city, and I think this idea is so cute. He was not being used that day because he was on reserve. He had to be like phone call available in that city. Well, I was still at home. So we decided to go see the same movie at like a morning matinee time. We had like a day date, but in different states. You just have to be creative, and it's fun sometimes. Friends are...
Again, that's that creativity. Again, seems like a absolute necessity. Creativity.
Important. So knock on that neighbor's door just to get an egg, even if you don't really need one. Join that Bible study. Start your own pilot wives in that city. Well, I was still at home. So we decided to go see the same movie at like a morning matinee time. We had like a day date, but in different states. You just have to be creative, and it's fun sometimes. Friends are important. So knock on that neighbor's door just to get an egg, even if you don't really need one. Join that Bible study. Start your own pilot wives group in your city and host a girls' night somewhere. Another aspect of being alone a lot, even though you're married, is to discuss the arrival back home schedule. Like he wants to crash.
You spend most of your workday in emails.
No, I don't. That's not true.
You don't really need one. Join that Bible study. Start your own pilot wives group in your city and host a girls' night somewhere. Another aspect of being alone a lot, even though you're married, is to discuss the arrival back home schedule. Like he wants to crash. I need to edit that out. He wants to live like a bachelor when he gets home. I don't need to plan a social event for our family right when he gets home. I would crave adult conversation because I haven't spoken to anyone in like 4 days. Well, he's been around people, making small talk conversation in the cockpit for 4 days. So we've discussed that feeling or need of his and the need of me, and he is going to listen, but I know not to unload all of my feelings and thoughts right when he gets home from work. A pilot does not bring his work home to his wife, and that is one of the best aspects of being married to a pilot. When he is done with work, he closes it up and doesn't think about it again, doesn't have to check emails, doesn't have to check the phone calls. Like he is...
Okay, just on this point, that's once they've made it. And this is really important to note, because when you're training, that's not quite the same because you're still processing new information. You're still on that learning curve, right? Once you're there and you get settled into your role, okay, fair enough. That might be slightly different. But when you're studying, you're coming home and you're probably thinking, I need some more study time, right? So that affects social time.
Able to decompress. However, one thing to think about is if he does get on a new plane or want to upgrade to a captain position, he will move to a new base. You don't want to relocate your family to that new base. You want to keep living in Houston where the cost of living might be cheaper. So let me explain. My husband was based in San Fran when he upgraded to captain, but we wanted to still live in Houston with all these other pilots who were commuting to San Fran to start work and to end work. So every time he would have like a 4-day trip or a 2-day trip, he would have to fly standby to get to San Fran with all the other people trying to fly standby. And so that means because of that and because of weather, there's fog all the time, messing up on-time departures and stuff in San Francisco, as well as a lot of other cities. So he would have to leave the day before, and he would be gone for 4 days. So that makes his trip now 5 days long, and then getting home, it's like it could be an extra day as well. So just know that about commuting. We don't want to ever do it again. And we've said that twice through the 17.9 years. Being married to a pilot means you are not together a lot, but it is confidence building. Whenever something breaks in the house, it's like you're a single mom. You have to deal with it. You have to change the 20-foot high ceiling fire alarm battery at 2 a.m. when it's beeping in the middle of the night. You have to sleep in the house by yourself when you hear weird noises right outside the window. You have to go to church by yourself, but you can do it. It feels good and it builds your self-esteem, I guess, or your self-confidence when you have to step out of your comfort zone. And you can share these tips with other new wives. For my husband, it gives him peace while he is working, like mental peace, knowing that if something bad happens, I'm going to take care of it because he's not always phone available. And I'm not going to freak out and just hide in a corner if the toilet overflows for the second time this month. My friend here in Houston writes the blog, The Pilot Wife Life, and she says, first, love yourself. You have to be content with who you are and love yourself because of how Jesus views you and what Jesus says about your worth. When you are thinking about your pilot being on an airplane with all these beautiful women in high heels and full makeup, you're not like telling yourself lies. You're telling yourself truths about what God thinks about you. And then you can view your circumstances, you can view your husband, you can view your...
Okay, let me translate that. Let me translate that. In those situations,
and she says, first, love yourself. You have to be content with who you are and love yourself because of how Jesus views you and what Jesus says about your worth. When you are thinking about your pilot.
What does that do? That basically means deal with your autonomic nervous system. That's basically what they're describing, what she's describing there, right? You're reaffirming yourself in a spiritual sense to calm that voice down, to disarm that trigger, right? That alarm system that's going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. You're like, no, I am beautiful. I am this, I am loved. You're calming that trigger down and reaffirming yourself and loving yourself first, right? And not telling yourself lies about the situation. Now, hand in hand, what I said earlier, the boundaries are very important, right? And as somebody who is in aviation and who takes, you know, the idea of becoming an airline pilot very seriously, I think that's an important gift that I would give to my partner, is having those boundaries. Like, you're never going to catch me alone in private with, you know, a female coworker. It's just not going to happen, right? Or I'm not going to be having these secrets. And this is a standard that I've lived with generally, like, for years now. And I'm very happy with that standard. And those are gifts that I give to my partner, to whoever I'm with, because if they're going to be calming down, then like autonomic nervous system, their fight, flight, freeze response, right? There needs to be something that helps them, right? And if you're kind of no boundaries and don't really like have transparency and this secrecy, well, that's just going to give them more things to have to calm themselves down from, right? So you want to minimize that, or at least that's how I think about it. But I love how she's putting it here, is that the partner has to themselves also take charge of those triggers, right? And calm themselves down and reaffirm themselves when those alarm systems go, because it's not an external job. It's not something that somebody external can do. It's something that you have to do internally. And there's no escaping that. There's no escaping that. So I think, yeah, it's very beautifully put.
If something bad happens, I'm going to take care of it because he's not always phone available. And I'm not going to freak out and just hide in a corner if the toilet overflows for the second time this month. My friend here in Houston writes the blog, The Pilot Wife Life, and she says, first, love yourself. You have to be content with who you are and love yourself because of how Jesus views you and what Jesus says about your worth. When you are thinking about your pilot being on an airplane with all these beautiful women in high heels and full makeup, you're not like telling yourself lies. You're telling yourself truths about what God thinks about you. And then you can view your circumstances, you can view your husband, you can view your own self and your self-worth through God's eyes instead of like what we make up in our head so easily.
Oh, and the other thing, another standard for me is honesty, even when it's uncomfortable. So if you don't want to know, don't ask me. don't. Hey, if you ask me, if you make the mistake of asking me, I will tell you the truth. Right? And I would rather not say anything than lie. Right? And I love the rule that says, tell the truth or at least don't lie. All right. And that's for me a very, very important standard, because as soon as untruths start to come in, remember the first video, one of the first videos we watched, they talked about the word trust. As soon as there's untruths that come in, then the erosion of trust comes in, because now it's like, can I really bank on what you just said, or can I not? I don't know anymore, right? Because last time I banked on it and actually turned out to be different than what you said. And it wasn't a genuine human mistake. It's literally that you misled me, right? So now I'm not sure if I trust you. So now when my alarm systems are going, I don't know whether I should be calming down my alarm systems or whether my alarm systems are right. Do you see what I'm saying? It becomes a much tougher situation. And so that's why for me, I have to have the standard of tell the truth or at least don't lie. Because if I say something, it has to be true. So don't ask me if you don't want to know. And that can be uncomfortable. It's not easy because sometimes sometimes you have to live with the consequences of telling the truth. You do. And it's not easy. It's not easy. It's not easy.
As women and wives. The pilot wife lifestyle is not luxury travel every week because real life gets in the way. A lot of pilots, when they get off that airplane, they don't want to see the airport again until they have to go back to work. So a lot of wives are like disappointed. My husband doesn't like to do that sometimes, but then he gears himself up mentally for going on a trip or something like that, and then he's fine with it. We have to remember that every week because real life gets in the way. A lot of pilots, when they get off that airplane, they don't want to see the airport again until they have to go back to work. So a lot of wives are like disappointed. My husband doesn't like to do that sometimes, but then he gears himself up mentally for going on a trip or something like that.
He gears himself up mentally for going on a trip or something like that. Really important, because what people can think is, well, why do you have to gear yourself up? Why can't you just be okay with it? It's like, no, our brains work in different ways. And so I might need to gear myself up for that just because I do so much, or what I do taxes me so much that when it comes to this, I wouldn't naturally want to do it, even though it's a nice thing to do it. So I have to gear myself up for it. And that's okay. And I think when you're in an adult relationship, that's understood because it's like, well, we're human. We sometimes we won't feel like it, right? And we're going to have to work ourselves into it. And that's okay.
And then he's fine with it. We have to remember that when they are at work, they are working. They are bearing the burden of 140 plus people's lives.
Imagine being able to build.
Yeah, they're bearing bearing the lives of people when they're an airline pilot. But before that, they're carrying, the weight of potentially an impossible dream that they're trying to make happen. And that in itself is heavy too.
So it's not just sitting on an airplane and then sitting in a hotel. They are working. So when they get back home, they want to decompress and maybe play a game of golf the next day. Well, you've been with the kids for 4 days straight with no break. One captain that my husband flew with a long time ago said, my wife just doesn't get it. I just want to play golf when I get home. Now, she's been with the kids for the past 6 days. What do you think is unfair about that? What is unfair to him about that? So you have to discuss like what his needs are to relax and what your needs are in order to relax, and ask him to stay with the kids or go on a date with you. He can ask you to wait for him so that he can play golf because it's finally pretty on his day off. Just discussing each other's needs and respecting the deep need that each other has, and then giving and sacrificing for each other. Being married to a pilot means the schedule is not predictable. Pilots find out their schedule around 2 weeks before the next month. So like Peter Weber, if he is a junior guy, seniority level, he might not have your birthday off. He might not be available for that family reunion that your entire family is banking on in July of next year. So I just make plans to be there, and if he can join us, that is great. For making meals for the week, if they're on reserve, it's really hard to go to the grocery store on Monday for the entire week. So mentally, my expectation is I'm gonna buy a few basics, and then if he's home, I'll run to the store again, or ask him to go to the store again.
So that's that adaptability again. And I think, for the training pilot, it's not so much that they're going to have a rota that potentially, has them not there. It's for example, when assessment season opens up, right? My full focus, or even just before it opens up, like let's say August to December, I'm a different way, because I don't have assessments coming up. Like I start slowly preparing for them, but I'm not full out, right? But then when it hits January, New Year, February, March, this is scholarship season, it's assessment season. And sometimes you don't know the exact date it's going to open, right? And so there you are kind of wandering around and, hey, like, here comes Valentine's Day, and then boom, on the 12th, the application's open. Now you're like, okay, cool, I've got a week to put in the best application possible. So now your focus goes boom, let's focus, because I cannot afford to miss an opportunity for a sponsorship of 120K's worth, you know, of a sponsorship and a guaranteed job at the end of it for one Valentine's Day date. Like, that's not long-term thinking. If somebody said you have to sacrifice a Valentine's Day, and if you can do that, you're going to get sponsored worth 120K plus, and you're going to have a guaranteed job doing the thing you've dreamt to do. Like, that, I don't know about you, but that's a sacrifice worth making. And so sometimes that's the unpredictability for the training pilot, right? For example, I now want to apply for a particular opportunity that's come up, but for that, I have to have a class 1 medical, but I have a class 2 medical, right? So class 1 medical is higher, right? And it costs about $1,000 to do it, right? So out of nowhere, because the opportunity came up, now I've just got to spend $1,000 like that. Otherwise, I missed the opportunity, right? Or last year when the airline cadet schemes opened, I was like, I need to prepare myself. And boom, I got myself into a course, paid hundreds of pounds to prepare myself. It's taken me a longer time to apply what I learned from that course. So I feel like I'm better prepared this year than I was last year. But I had to spend like that, just hundreds like that out of nowhere. So when you're like training, you have to make the most of the opportunities that come up, and you never know what opportunity is going to come up. So I would say unpredictability on this side of having an airline job comes from lining yourself up with opportunities that you didn't see coming, but you need to make the most of it, regardless of the fact that you didn't see it coming. And that can be difficult for partners to understand and to flow with. And no wonder, because it is challenging, you know?
I'll tell him you need to go to the store, blah, blah, blah. I'll ask him, because that's a more respectful approach for your husband, and vice versa. My advice to you young pilot wives is, when you have kids, go on those trips in the fall and the winter when there are open seats. And while your children are in elementary school, take them out of school and take them out of preschool and go then. Because now our kid is in high school and we cannot travel because of sports during this season. He struggles in math, so we don't want to pull him out of school all the time like we used to. In the beginning, when you get an oddball vacation in the middle of September, right after school has started, take them out and go on that family vacation. Make memories in a creative way. And when you do get a real vacation, spend the money, splurge. That's what we do. We went out to eat like once a week for a few years. Oh wow, how much money we would save if we did that again. But when we go on vacation, we splurge. That's what we save our money for. Make memories together after he has landed and decompressed. The best part of being married to a pilot is that you are married. He is committed to you. He chose you, and you chose him. It is worth it work. He is happy to come home to you, but that's when he can take off the mask and be a bachelor for an hour and just be a slob. That's what some men enjoy about their wives, is that they can just let down and be ugly and gross right after they have finished working. Talk about misconceptions before you get married. Talk about what disciplining your kids is going to look like before you get married. Plan day dates when he is home. One flight change that we made shortly after we were married is when we would talk to each other in the middle of the afternoon or at night, we would both close our laptops, turn off the TV, pause whatever video we were watching to give each other undivided attention. I needed to talk about what went on in my day, and I needed to know that he was hearing me. And so he sacrificed by listening to me. You know, just talk about your needs and what you can do for each other. Send me a question if you are marrying a pilot. I would love to chit chat with you, and I appreciate your time that you took to watch this video.
So yeah, really good, really good. So as we wrap up, talk about your needs. Here's a truth that I've found to be real. Sometimes people don't talk about their needs because, well, they've got good reason for not expressing their needs, right? Because it feels exposing to say, this is what I need, and to actually spell it out feels vulnerable. And if the other person doesn't do that thing, it then feels like that rejection will be real rejection, like rejection of me, actually me. So a lot of the times what can happen is, because to negotiate successfully, you actually have to come in and say, this is what I really want. And then the other person says, this is what I really want and need. And then you say, okay, cool. What about if we go about it this way? Does that meet what you need and meet what I need to enough for us to be okay and to not get resentful? But that's dependent on the two people making clear what exactly they need. And so sometimes we're tempted to not say what we need, but to kind of say the version of our need that we think is acceptable to the other person. So we don't really fully reveal ourselves. We just kind of tell them a piece, right? And so we negotiate not based on what we really need, but we negotiate based on what we felt we could say in that moment. But that doesn't really resonate with us. And what can happen is then you then negotiate something that in the end doesn't really work for anybody. Right? And the other thing about saying what you need that's challenging is it's vulnerable, because when you say what you really need, now if the other person really had it in for you, they know exactly what to not give you. So it's vulnerable. And that's where, again, that word trust comes in. Trust comes in, vulnerability comes in, intimacy, which is into me, see, comes into it. So yeah, I think some really, really interesting thoughts. I'm glad I went down this rabbit hole. I've learned a lot from this. There are definitely conversations that I will be having in the future in light of these conversations and these videos. So I think the things that stuck out for me is, one, adaptability is a necessity. Yeah, flexibility and adaptability, being able to shift with the moments, right? It's no good being one way and stuck that way, right? That's important to look for. That's important to have. It sounds rough, but also the idea of your partner being happy by themselves seems really important. Multiple people said it by themselves, right? That's really important. That's a feature. And obviously that goes hand in hand with that is building trust, having boundaries, having honesty and transparency helps to maintain that, in my opinion. The other thing is creativity. You have to be looking for creative ways to make it work. Whether it's telling the children that Santa himself is working on Christmas Eve and therefore Santa's not at home, just like your parent is not at home. So, you know, there's a special provision for people like doctors and pilots, all of that, to celebrate Christmas on a different day, right? That's creative. And there's many other ways of being creative as well that's been mentioned in the video. So I love that. So I think it's important, if you're going to be dating and trying to become a pilot, if I'm going to be dating and trying to become a pilot, to look for adaptability for sure, to look for creativity, and to bring creativity. Yeah, look for and bring adaptability, look for and bring creativity, and be good with space, right? But like the other pilot said, you know, little check-ins can be really powerful. Little check-ins, little moments of connection can be really useful. But the problem the problem becomes when those little check-ins like evolve into bigger check-ins, and then you don't get enough sleep and you don't get enough, you know, rest, you don't get enough study time. That's the problem. So if they can stay little, then you're winning. But yeah, I hope you guys found the conversation useful. I'd love to know what your thoughts are. I'd love to know what your opinions are. What was your takeaway? What did you find particularly useful? Was there something that you didn't realize before that, you know, going through this journey has highlighted to you? Let me know, because we all pick up on different things, and when somebody kind of bounces it back, it makes it stand out even more in our minds. So you don't know who you could be helping. So please do share your thoughts. Right. Thank you to the people who have jumped in the chat. I appreciate your involvement as always. I appreciate your involvement. Thank you very much for passing by. Thank you to the new subscribers. We've had an influx of new subscribers. Thank you. If you're watching on Kick, make sure you hit that follow button and you will be notified every time I am online. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up. Look, you don't even have to like the video. Just give me the thumbs up. Just give me the thumbs up, man. And I will much, much, much appreciate that. All right. If you have questions, as always, leave them in the comments or feel free to email me. You know, some people are a bit shy. Let me know. Let me know. Let me know. But I hope you guys enjoy that. I hope you've caught up with all the streams, the guests that I had on. Let me know. Do you guys like it when I have guests? Or do you guys just want to hear my voice? Let me know what you like. In fact, I'm looking for producers. I want to add a bunch of producers for this show. So if you want to know a bit more about that, and that might be something you're interested in, then hit me up. I would greatly appreciate the help of producers for this show because I want to keep it going. Right. Remember, I'm doing streams for my airline prep sessions, but they are on Patreon, Future Pilot 901 on Patreon. And the reason why is I don't want no one sabotaging me. You know, I don't want no one sabotaging me. Because some of you like to lurk in the background and I don't know who you are and you're taking away my information. So on Patreon, I will know who you are, you will know who I am, and the material is there for you. I've got 5 sessions on there now, and I will keep on doing that until I'm through the whole selection process. So I will be putting kind of like timely updates of how it's going, how I've done, what worked, what didn't work, what I'm doing, how I'm preparing. So if you want a part of that, check out the Patreon. As I said, Future Pilot 901 on Patreon. Right. Well, that's it for me for today. I'll be back next week. Remember, changes are afoot. Changes are afoot. Changes are afoot. Shout out to my aunt. She still wants the free tickets. Say less. Changes are afoot. I'm going to be changing how I'm doing the show a little bit. Just optimizing things, making them better. Right? And if you don't weigh in, you don't drop a comment, you don't let me know what you think would make it better, well, you don't get to complain. That's how it works. That's how it works. That's how it works. Right, people, shout out to my producers, current and future ones. Thank you to all that have passed through. I hope you have a great, productive, and amazing week. Until next time, this is Future Pilot 901, and I am your future captain. My name is D, and above all, I'm reminding you to live your dream. Peace.
Ever since I was a kid, I had a dream of becoming a pilot, but could never afford it. One day I decided to stop making excuses, to sacrifice my comfort, to make my dream happen. My name is D, and this is my journey. This is Future Pilot 901.